Another useful feature we can add to our table is sorting, and that's exactly what we'll learn about in this video. Let's jump into the documentation and see how it works. There's a couple places where we can learn how to implement our Angular material sorting. One is within the table component. They have a really good example. If you scroll down to the features and then select the sorting, this will show you how to implement sorting within your table. What we're trying to implement is this sorting. So as you can see this arrow next to the number, if you select this, it will sort the numbers by ascending and descending order. If we take a closer look at this code example, and under the TypeScript file, like with the pagination, the MatSort module that we'll be bringing in comes from its own component. So we could use sorting independently of the table component. Let's take a closer look at the Angular material sort. You can find that page by clicking on the sort header component over here on the left. I have it open in a new tab here. And then here's a basic example without using Angular material table. And if we look at the code example, we'll need to bring in the MatSort module to get started. I'll copy this and we'll add this within our TypeScript file. Back inside of our data display component, we'll add in the import snippet from the documentation. And then we'll update this so we don't need this sort interface. And the reason we don't need this sort type is because we don't plan on handling the sorting logic ourselves. Instead, we're going to be using the mat table data source to help us with that. All we're interested in is the module, and this module will give us access to the directives that we need. I'll add the MatSort module within the imports array within our component. We'll be coming back to this file in a second, but for now, this is the only thing we need to set up. Now we'll update our template with the directives. And then within our table element, towards the end here, I'll add in the MatSort directive. And to target a specific header to add sorting, you could add a directive to the table header. And you guessed it, it's called MatSort header. And in this case, we'll go ahead, we'll add this directive to all of our columns. So I'll add it to the name, category, the price, and last is our stock. We'll add it to that as well. We should now see the sorting arrow within our template. Let's test this in the browser. Now back in the browser, you should see an arrow next to the column title. However, if you select it though, it won't sort it yet. The reason for that is we did not connect our sorting to our table. There's documentation on how to do that. If we go back to the Angular material table, back inside the TypeScript file we were looking at earlier, they have an example here on how to apply sorting to our table. And we'll be applying this example here. In the last video, when we were setting up our pagination, we already set up our data source. And our data source is using an instance of the mat table data source. And this comes from Angular material table. If you missed that last video, you'll want to set this up here. And then also set up your mat table data source. Once you have the data source set up, you should have a property within it called sort. And we could set this to the sorting we already have set up within our template. I'll copy this right here and we'll add this within our component. Back within the data display component, right below the paginator we set up in the last video, I'll add in that sort example. And then we'll need to bring in the MatSort, and you want to bring that in from Angular material sort. If you're seeing this error, this is a TypeScript error that we haven't initialized this property. To get around this, we could add in the non-null assertion operator, and you add that towards the end like I'm doing here. This is telling TypeScript you don't have to warn us about this. We plan on initializing this property. Now we have our controls, we have access to our arrows. Now we need to attach it to our data source. And like we did with our paginator, we'll call on this data source. And then there should be a property called sort. And we'll set it to this sort. If we test this in the browser, our sorting should be working within our table. Before we do that though, let's clean up our HTML. If we go back to the HTML page, and then if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we could remove this table. I left this here so we could compare it to our Angular material table, but we don't need this anymore. And that's the only changes we need to make within the HTML. Let's test this in the browser. Let's start off by testing our ID. And when we select this, this should sort by ascending and descending order. And that looks good. And then the name should be alphabetical. That appears to be working. And also our category, the price, and the stock. This looks really good, and this is how you add sorting within your table.